Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Writing Life. I'm Stephen W. Long. The show today is a little bit different. This is about writing, but all aspects of writing, which includes critiquing. And so we have two guests today, Max Stinson, Danielle Cadena Doolin. Did I do it pretty good?
Pretty good.
Pretty, oh, help me out. What's better?
No, cadena.
Cadena.
Yeah, it's a Spanish pronunciation. No, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
So from Southern California, would it have been La Cadena?
Yes.
That's more appropriate? Well, there you go. I love this show. I learn something all the time. So we've had Danielle on before for your poetry primarily. You're a professor as well.
Yes.
And you guys do a podcast called Lit from the Basement.
Yep.
Yeah. And I love the name because there's kind of a dual meaning there. I mean, it could be the light or literature from the basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Or having a few glasses of wine to get lit up as well.
Okay, there you go. Aren't words great?
Yeah.
As I was thinking about having you guys together and doing a little interview here, I thought when you write, I've been advised that you should have an ideal reader in mind. Stephen King does that, his ideal reader. Do you guys have an ideal audience?
A listener.
A listener?
We have one that I think that fits the demographic.
Okay.
Or we're
To a certain extent. I think that when we started doing this, part of our aim was just to do it for ourselves.
Right.
That
For
was-
the most
yeah.
part, just to have some more conversation, and we can talk a little bit more later about that. But yeah, the listeners that seem to respond the most to the show, the ones that write in, and these sorts of things, tend to be Gen Xers like us,
Okay.
Generation X.
Sure.
Some people slightly younger, some people slightly older, but people who have been out of school probably for a little while. Usually they have a
Okay.
humanities degree,
Okay.
or in something, and
They've had
and
some
miss-
exposure. This is not the first time.
no.
Yeah, usually not. No,
Right.
usually they miss their English classes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is sort of a way to engage more deeply with literature in a way that they can sort of engage with in their everyday life.
Okay. I read a little bit. You have a website, Caroline. Maybe we can get that up there. But I read about your approach, and talk a little bit about that. How you two interact.
Oh, sure.
We get kind of a weekly classes.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm the poetry professor, and he's
Right.
not.
Yeah.
Right.
And when we first thought about starting a podcast, we were trying to think about skill sets that we both could draw from.
Okay.
Obviously, I have a background in academia and in teaching and in poetry. Max has always been so great with picking up any kind of software, and also he's a wonderfully spontaneous speaker.
Right.
And I think that so when we started putting this together, we decided that we were going to lean on those two things.
Sure.
So I write out a script that's
A lesson plan, pretty much.
a lesson
Yeah.
plan.
Okay. All right.
So I'm mostly scripted in the show.
And I'm just the peanut gallery. I'm the smart-ass student who's sitting in the back,
Uh-huh.
kind of giving a commentary during her lecture in class.
Okay. But there is a sort of an end goal, I think, right? And that is to dissect this. Well, what I read was that you use this to talk about larger topics. Okay.
Well,
Is
also
that-
because we're two parents, we got a later start in life. Our energies are low, and we found ourselves after a day of her working and me spending all day with our two boys,
Yeah.
3 and 5. We found ourselves just sitting in front of the TV, not even
Zoning
talking,
out.
just kind of like channel surfing. And we wanted, it was a project like, let's do something that forces us, not that it's difficult for us to sit and talk, but something that gives us a task. Like, no, once a week we're going to
Right.
sit down and engage on some topic together for
Right.
an hour. So we can just reconnect as husband and wife again, which is something we were really missing.
Okay. So the springboard for the topic or talking together is a poem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not difficult for you to
No.
pick a poem, I'm sure.
That's actually the most difficult
yeah.
part
Is
for
it
me.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's so many that I know and love,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So sitting down and thinking about a poem that not only that I love, and can speak to
Right.
smartly, hopefully.
Okay.
But also that Max will respond to because he's poetry resistant.
Ah,
So there's been this whole aspect of our relationship of me being a poetry professor and him.
Right. I don't slight it or I dismiss it. My wife is profoundly intelligent. I'm always in awe of her skills and her mind, but poetry just never
just didn't resonate.
hasn't resonated with me.
Yeah.
Other beyond things that would resonate with an adolescent boy. If it's edgy and mean sounding, yeah, I'll like it.
What is it about us?
Yeah. It takes us a while to find things pretty, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I call it testosterone poisoning, but
Yeah. No, I'll take that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that sounds apropos.
yeah.
But I was actually really surprised when we started doing this. I didn't even realize, I mean, we've been together for years and years, we've been married, we had children.
Right.
That I don't even think that I realized that I had been coming home from work every day, and he's like, how was work? And I was like, fine.
Yeah.
How are things with the boys? And he's like,
Fine.
fine.
Right.
And I don't think I realized the extent to which I did not communicate with him about everything that I had been thinking about all day long.
Sure.
Not just the literature that I was reading, but also the idea of teaching, right? Thinking
Right.
about pedagogy,
Right.
and then also particular poets whose names resonate deeply with me,
Right.
simply because I've thought about their work for so long,
Sure.
but that I'd never mentioned to him, you know? So he's like, how's work? Fine. Well, this was kind of an opportunity for us to sit down and for him to sort of, for me to explain to him the things that I love most,
Right.
that I spend most of my time thinking about. And so that in of itself created this sort of more intimate space for talking about literature, you know, shared between two people who love one another,
Yeah.
as opposed to like standing up at a podium or reading it silently to
You
yourself.
know what I'm sort of picking up is that you were aware of that. You know what I mean? So you could do it and not be aware of it, but it clicked with you. I guess you said to yourself, whoa, wait a minute. There's more there. How can we get there? This is a way to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly.
Okay, so, boy, lots of things to talk about. I had a manufacturing business, and one of the things that we used to talk about was creating the product is maybe not so hard, or the simpler part of the whole process. We used to say you have to make it go away. In other words, you have to market it. You have to sell this thing. Not that you're selling it, but you talked about, and you've made me jealous, by the way, people writing to you. Nobody writes to me. and
We'll send you an email.
all right. And how do you reach out? How do you connect with people? Is it word of mouth on their part, or do you? And we have a promo, right? That we can
We
show
do actually. That'd be a
sometime.
great thing if it's queued up. We're trying to make things at least. It's mainly word of mouth, but I thought maybe doing something cute. And
Sure.
I like picking up software. I like picking skills up. So I.
And you
So
did
he
this.
learned animation to
Right. I'm not an artist. I bought stock vector graphics. I got Adobe character animation. I plug it in, and it has motion capture, so I can actually move, and it'll follow my animation.
Oh my goodness.
I am not drawing cell animation. I don't have those skills.
Right.
But we could show what a promo
Yeah,
looks
sure.
like.
Dialectics are all about representations of thought, like the architecture of thought, and what happens when you're having a conversation with somebody. But the way that it is also used, not just within conversation with somebody else, is actually when you are in conversation with yourself trying to figure something out.
Oh.
It is also used for when you're having an argument with somebody. But in this particular case, a dialectic, you present your thesis as some kind of an argument.
My kung fu is better than yours.
My kung fu is better than this other person's kung fu. You think antithesis. That's the next thing that's brought up. Argument and then opposite of that.
Okay.
So the other person believes that their kung fu is better than mine. And eventually, what you come to at the end of that is
It's a cage match.
No!
Oh, okay.
A synthesis.
Oh, okay.
So if you're going to have a satisfying dialectic, that synthesis is going to push you in thinking back and forth. You kind of go back and forth between these two lines of thinking, and it pushes you into like a third other unimagined thing at the end of it.
That everyone hopes is better?
Or perhaps we have different strengths, is a way to think. The end of that argument. My kung fu's better. No, you think your kung fu's booze better, perhaps we have different strengths.
Yeah, I'm good at blocking, you're good at sweeping the leg.
Exactly, right?
And-
Like that might be a way to do that. And this is like a highly oversimplified version, especially of what's going on in
In the poems.
Yeah, yes.
Of post-production.
Per show?
Per show, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's an hour-long show, but then I do about 7 hours of writing for creating the show.
Boy, oh
Ahead of
boy.
time, yeah.
Ahead of time, and then he does
Okay.
7 to 16 hours of
I'm
post-production.
so glad you said that, because I would have thought that it didn't take that you
Oh,
sit
no.
down, you have
Oh,
fun,
no.
and I know
No,
you
it
do
really
have
does.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we definitely have fun, but
Yeah, and I think it's good. I feel like I'm carrying my weight more if I'm doing a lot of hours after, because all the hours she puts in ahead of time doing the lesson plan, and I
Okay.
goof off while she does her lesson.
okay.
I feel good to myself about investing time in, getting the sound, mixing the sound and doing all the editing.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a certain aspect of the show, I don't know if you know this, but during the reading of the poem, we read it twice, once at the beginning and then once at the end.
Okay.
Partly just to introduce the poem at the beginning, and then the
Right.
readers, or our listeners rather, get to listen to the poem a
With
second
different
time.
ears.
With different
After
ears.
you've-
After we
right.
discuss it, right?
Yeah.
But during those readings, Max does sort of soundscapes behind it. In order to heighten certain aspects of the poem. Say if it's a poem about rowing on water, there's a sound of rowing water behind it. Simple things like that. We try to stick to more natural sounds.
Yeah, and also not so intrusive to where they take over the poem. Just kind of like a background ambience,
Exactly.
so it's not just a flat, quiet read.
In a movie, I think lots of folks, me included, probably don't pay enough attention to the score, at least all the time, but it's there and it makes the difference. It really,
Same thing with the Foley and
what's
the
an
ambient
analogy?
sound.
Say-
Yeah.
say it-
Same thing with the Foley artist and the ambient sound of like
Okay.
somebody eating in if the couple's eating in a diner, you need that ambient background
Right.
sound to just make it feel
real.
real. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's great. How do you do a podcast? And I'm thinking in part the hardware, like the equipment, so you have mics and so on, obviously.
Yeah. So we do have a small studio in our basement.
In our basement.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and it's very basic. It's just 2 mics. Well, we have a couple of other mics for some.
Well, actually, yeah, you have a picture up. That's
Yeah,
that's
that's
literally
literally
where we
that's our
sit.
studio.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got the baffling on the ceiling, and I mean it's literally in a basement. I had to brush all the spider webs away when we sit down to play. Or
Right.
Sit down. Yeah.
But yeah, we just have these 2 mics and some pop filters to keep us a little bit more or a little less.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't have like a live production assistant like how you guys have, who can do like the mixing on the sound levels on the fly. So that's another thing I have to do in post.
Okay. How did this, I know kind of what got us to this point anyway, but then to say, you know what, we need to open up to each other. We need to share more. We need to not be our separate little islands. Why this? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I think it was sort of drawn out of kind of 2 things for me anyway. One was that I had just gotten tenure in my
Okay,
job,
okay.
and I was feeling like I wanted a new challenge, and I had the space to sort of explore that because I had just gotten tenure, and I was feeling sort of sad that the thing that I know and love best, poetry,
Yeah.
was still thought of as this inaccessible thing to so many people. And that I had so many students over my 17 years teaching
Right.
come into my classroom thinking they didn't like poetry. And it's just that they weren't introduced to it in the right way
Right.
with a person who loved it, right? And so many of my students left the class saying that they were surprised that they liked poetry now.
Right.
And I thought I wanted to create some sort of space where somebody could access this at any kind of point of their life in a time that was convenient for them. So
Okay.
they didn't have to sign up for a class or anything like that. And so I wanted to sort of share that joy. But I also wanted to spend more time with Max.
Right.
And he and I have long talked about creating various things. We've talked
Projects
about-
together. Yeah.
talked about writing a children's book together. We just like creating things together.
Right.
So when we,
In addition to children.
in addition to children, right? So when we started talking about this, we were really starting with what can we create together.
Okay.
And what is something,
So the development of this was very conscious. I guess that's kind of what I was saying. This is where we want to go. How do we get there? And these are the things that are available. Oh, let's do this. And I think even to the best of my knowledge, the concept of a podcast is newish.
Yeah, I guess we're late to the game. It's kind of like a flooded market. There's 3,000 literary podcasts
Yeah,
now.
something like that. But it's
Yeah.
there. But in the last 10 years, yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
is really when podcasts have begun to take off.
Okay.
And I think partly the technology has become so
Accessible, yeah.
Right.
and also inexpensive. I mean, some of the mics that we have, inexpensive compared to what it was 10 years ago or
Right.
20 years ago.
Right.
There was one mic that I had because in college I was a contemporary music minor, and I used to play music with a number of people. And I had an old mic that was considered a very, very nice mic
Right.
from 15 years ago.
Okay.
Right? And it was so funny. It was really expensive back then. And then I was like, well, I wonder what this mic would cost now.
Right.
You know, and it's like $100. You know, not nearly as much as it would have cost
Right.
earlier. So
For a couple $100, yeah, we were able to outfit our studio.
Right.
Right.
And so, as a hobby, gosh, golf costs more than that. Skiing costs more than that. So that's
Yeah,
that-
paintball, anything, yeah.
That's okay. Paintball
I
wouldn't be
go
in my
low.
repertoire, but yeah. Okay. Max, I was not that you wrote this, but I was reading on your website about your format. Well, I guess you wrote it because it says our format is pretty simple. I introduce Max to a poem, and he asks questions about it. We laugh a lot. We veer off topic. We get things wrong. Take me through something like that. What would it be? And so you have an outline,
Right.
and you're prepared to do this. Does he throw you off track? And that's good, I guess.
Yeah, we've gotten to where I've realized we've been doing this enough to where I realize that maybe I'm throwing her too hard off, and so I reel it back in because
Okay.
my thing is to sit there and just be the smart ass. So sometimes
Yeah.
I have to dial that way back.
Okay.
And also because I'm kind of the proxy for a listener, especially if it's a person who's not
Right.
particular to poetry.
Yeah.
I'm asking the questions like why. Okay. One of my favorite shows was us doing D.A. Powell.
Oh, D.A. Powell's
Ode.
Ode. Yeah.
I'm suspicious of poetry. I'm profoundly suspicious of avant-garde poetry.
Okay.
And this particular poem,
Yeah, I looked at because I don't see the poem until we record.
Okay.
That's when I first see it.
No preparation on your
No,
part.
I do a cold. When she reads it, it's the first time I hear it, and I read along with her. And I looked at it, and I just started rolling my eyes. I'm thinking, great. I don't want to, because we don't want to have a show where we're bagging on an artist's work.
That's not the
That's no
point.
fun. That's
Right.
not
no,
cool.
it's definitely not the point.
But when I saw it, I just like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I found out that you selected it knowing that I would have a hard time with it and come around, and I did. I came
Oh,
around
that's
on
great.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what show number that was, but
Right.
it's Ode by D.A. Powell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I knew that you were going to be resistant to it, but also the poem is so clever. I mean, partly that particular poem, the visual aspect of it I knew that Max would find off-putting. Instead of, so D.A. Powell's books, here I'm using this as
Yeah.
a visual example.
Sure.
So most books are up and down like this.
Okay.
In
right?
portrait.
So in portrait, yeah.
Right.
But his book is in landscape.
Yeah.
So that he has these long poems that have these caesuras, these little spaces between short lines. So it's almost as if he gets a long line and a short line, both at once.
Okay.
It's a really clever, beautiful way of showing a kind of continuousness, but also fragmentation
Okay.
at the same time. And
When I looked at it, I thought it was just visual gimmickry. That this is somebody trying to look cool on the
Right.
page.
Right.
This was my approach, and I'm not. I believe I'm definitely more of a layperson when it comes to looking at it. So that's kind of my role in the show is.
But I knew that he was going to love all of the 80s references. I knew that he was going to love the Dave Powell is really smart, clever, funny.
Yes.
He's a very funny
Layered,
guy. And
yep.
also, he does these wonderful things where there are elements of the poem that are humorous and are sort of tongue-in-cheek. oh, but then at some point he gives you a gut punch.
Right.
Of emotion, you know, and I knew that he was going to respond to that. And
Right.
so I was like, okay, I know you aren't going to like this. You
Here
think
it
you're
comes.
not gonna
Yeah,
like
right.
this, but you're going to like this when we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, as you guys were talking, and I actually asked you a sort of a similar question when we did this before, but I hadn't really clarified the idea that poetry is different than prose, in that you could read somebody prose, and it's the words, it's the sound, but in poetry it's really both.
Right.
I mean,
Visual aspect.
or at least there can be a visual component in some cases, and this sounds like one of them.
Well, it's one of the things that distinguishes poetry from the other genres.
Yeah.
Of course, you have things like prose poems, which are, you know, poems that are written in prose, in which case they're sort of leaning on other aspects that poetry is capable of. They're leaning on imagery and associative leaps and things like that, more so than sort of regular prose. However, the thing that has long distinguished poetry from prose is the visual element, the way that the poem is lineated. So the pacing of the poem and what you pay attention to in the line, and the tension between the sentence structure and the way that the sentence is broken up on the page creates a different effect than it would otherwise. So yeah, I mean, there is a visual element to it. So, which is also why we have a show notes page where we actually have all of the poems up.
For every poem that we have, you
Really?
can, we have a website dedicated that just shows the poem, and then you can play the audio over as you read, so the people,
Oh, I think
listeners at
that's
home,
great.
can read along.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Because it is trying to, like, imagine having a show where we're discussing a painting. It'd be good to have that. Well, we do also have pictures up as well, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you were saying that, I was thinking, and again, I'm going to be a neophyte at this, but if you go back to Shakespeare or a form, let's say a sonnet,
Yeah.
that's formalized, that's kind of part of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually sonnets do come up. I love sonnets, and so they've come up often in
Yeah.
our show. I think that you probably, at this point, sort of
I
have heard me talk about it enough that you could probably name some of the elements of a sonnet. I wonder, can you name some elements of a
man,
sonnet?
Here we go, folks.
I didn't know there was going to be a test.
Yeah, yeah.
Bad student.
Okay, I know that. Okay, here's what I remember: the sonnet. It's a set number of lines, and it goes off Petrarch.
Petrarchian
Petrarchan
sonnet.
sonnets. Okay, off, and he was the Greek. No, he was Roman. He was Roman. Okay, anyways, but I do know what happens is
One of the old guys.
yeah. Okay,
Italian.
Italian.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rome.
Yeah,
is in
okay,
Italy.
okay, all right.
I know that I forgot what the rhyme structure is, or if there is one, but I do know that there's the turn at the end.
Yes.
And it's the last two lines spin against the drive of the poem, there's an emotional turn or some kind of revelation in the last two lines.
That's
That's
for
all
yeah, that's for a Shakespearean sonnet.
Okay,
In
okay.
the last two lines there. There are several different forms, but
So-
the two main forms are Petrarchan and Shakespearean.
Okay.
At any rate, though, but there's
That's all I
there's
remember.
certain expectations. That was really good.
Okay.
I thought it was great.
There's certain expectations for each form, and certain expectations, especially if you have a rhyme scheme,
Okay.
because the rhyme scheme is going to control, to a certain extent, how long you can go on the same topic. For example, in the Petrarchan sonnet, which is sort of split between what's called an octave and a sestet, the first 8 lines and the last 6 lines.
Okay.
And so that particular form allows you to go through and talk about a particular subject at the beginning for about 8 lines, and then there's what's the volta,
That's
the
it.
turn, right after that. And in a Petrarchan sonnet, you have another 6 lines to sort of decompress from whatever that is, or to turn away from that first topic, right?
Okay.
As opposed to a Shakespearean sonnet, where it's really 4 quatrains, so 4-line stanzas, and a couplet. And so what Shakespeare is so famous for is being able to go on and on and on and on in 3 quatrains of 3, 6, 9, 12, 4 quatrains about a subject, and then turn it on its head really quickly
Yeah.
in that last couplet. And he's beautiful at that. And so the very way that the poem is set up forces you into making certain rhetorical choices for how long you can go on about a particular topic.
Okay.
So Shakespeare is really deft at being able to turn very quickly away from the subject he's been talking about for
Okay.
the 12 lines before.
And see, that was a pitcher of knowledge poured into my shot glass brain. So I have usually a tabla rasa. The next time,
That's a
next time
poem in itself. Well, let me just say.
by the time we
Yeah.
get to the next episode, I've forgotten a lot of it, and it's taken us. It took us 9 months before caesura stuck in my brain.
Oh, really?
The intentional white space. I finally.
Sure.
Yeah, but it takes me. I have to hear her say something many, many times before it finally
Well,
sticks.
I think sure, and I mean,
And
it's
I don't
the
mind. I like
concept,
talking
but
to you.
but it's also that it's a foreign word.
Mm-hmm.
But what this reminded me of was a joke, and in this sense, they're both emotional. You know, you can have some kind of an emotional response to a joke, but it's the setup and the delivery. The setup, you think you're going in one direction, but you talk about a gut punch. I don't think it would be effective if you weren't already set up in another way.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. You're right. There's a certain amount of timing, pacing.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of whatever subject you've begun talking about, that then gets reversed quickly in the end, and that sort of gut punch, that the reversal, gut punch, sometimes in a humorous sense,
Yeah.
right? Being
But
like
it's a surprise.
Yes.
Then it's a banana
surprise.
slip.
Banana slip.
Yeah.
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 Depending on the poem.
Yeah. I have a friend, he's actually been on the show, Bob Zonizer, and he's in my writing group. And one of the things that we've praised him for is exactly that. And it's not a structure, I mean, but it is, you think you're going in one direction and then it's something else. And it often starts out fairly benign, and I don't know about I suspect Shakespeare is not benign, but, and it always gets you in the end, and it's just effective, I guess is what I was going to say. The other thing I wanted to ask is, you said Shakespeare's sonnets have a different structure than the Petrarchian?
In the Petrarchan sonnet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he invent that? Did anything come before? In Shakespeare's form, did anybody use that before Shakespeare did?
No, so Petrarch
Right.
invented the sonnet structure.
Right.
Shakespeare took that form and transposed it into English. And when he
Okay.
transposed it into English, he invented this particular
The quatrain?
What is the structure? Is there a rhyme structure to?
the particular rhyme scheme that goes
Okay.
along with that,
Okay.
and in his own sort of his own way of
Yeah.
approaching that form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
He didn't name it the Shakespearean sonnet, did he?
No, I
Okay.
think that was after him. I should just start doing this. I should create a form and be like, it's the Doolin,
Yeah.
Villanelle.
Yeah. Works for me.
Yeah.
I think if you say it with authority, and don't hesitate, everybody will buy it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much. We are kind of scooting out of time
Oh,
here.
okay, yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to talk about just before we get out of here? About your website, how to get people there, how they can watch this stuff?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, litfromthebasement.com. Just
Okay.
add a .com to that without the spaces.
All right.
And we have a couple of pages. If you land on our homepage, it has all the shows there. So if you don't want to subscribe to a podcast service, you can literally just get to it from our website. And then
Okay.
we do suggest just going to the show notes page and finding the poems there, because and the players. Each show has its own page with a player of that show on there, so you can read the poem while you listen.
Okay. And again, help me through this. That's the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The website, but you can listen to all of the podcasts on the website.
Like my mom is not tech savvy, so I'm not going to try and send her to Google Podcasts or
Give me
Apple
her
Tunes.
number. We can relate.
Right. So she just goes to litfromthebasement.com, and then it's the easiest way to navigate to it.
and just press play on whichever one you want to listen to.
Yeah.
We're going to have soon an index showing people by subject, author, or title, so people can search, because we're getting enough to where you actually need to put in a search.
Yeah, at
We're
this
getting enough
point.
episodes
We're about out
Oh,
of
yeah.
time, but how long have you been doing this?
Almost
a year
a
this
year.
Labor Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us on
Oh,
the show.
guys,
great coming here. Thank you.
Thanks. This is fun. That's it, folks. Somebody write me a letter, for heaven's sakes. StephenWLong.com, and we'll just see you next time on The Writing Live. Thanks. Thank you, guys.
do you think? We done?
I don't know, you guys want to do one just with yourself without me doing the
As long as they think we're
Broncos?
done, they got enough. They got enough.
They got enough? Probably, okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch. I'm
Oh.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use a bite too.